Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We're positively getting through the All-Star break, getting ready for a lot of things to happen around here. Exciting summer, and it's been a while. Obviously, a couple of years of the plague, and then before that, the plague that begat the baseball team. And summer is never a football time of the year, other than tragedy. But we're going to have some players coming back next week. We're going to be playing some football, playing relevant baseball for the first time in a long time. Dennis Koulatsos joins us now. He'll be here on Thursday from 3 until 5. And again, on Sunday morning, driving you around. He is the Sunday Sports Voice, now heard on Thursdays. You can follow him, of course, on Twitter at @DKoulatsos Show. And you can always go buy a car from him at Coons Ford Security Boulevard. Go visit him for any of new Fords, pre-loved, and make sure you're ordering online. Hey, man, we didn't order this online, did we? A real Orioles season, and I don't know if it's a pennant race yet, but it is a first chance at relevance in an all-star game and some games against the Yankees that sort of matter in July all of a sudden.
No, I think there's a certain buzz. I think that's a key word when we're addressing the Baltimore Orioles these days, Nestor. People are talking about them. They're relevant. Everywhere I go, people that come in, customers that talk sports with me, 99.9% of the time we'll start off the conversation talking about the Ravens or the NFL happenings. And now all of a sudden we have the Orioles at 500 right at the All-Star break, and they take Jackson Holliday, right, Matt Holliday's kid, with the first overall pick, which I happened to watch the baseball draft for the first time, I think, in my life.
Well, but it was never on television before. Don't feel like
I didn't know that.
Don't feel like it's been avoiding you. You haven't been avoiding it. Yeah.
I did not know this, but I was curious. I did study the top 4 or 5 prospects that were mocked to the Orioles. You know, I'm an NFL draft, Nick, and it was good. It was a good story, and time will tell, just like the NFL, if these young men pan out, what their ceilings are, what their floors may be. And it's an exciting time for the Orioles. At least there's some daylight right at the end of the tunnel. There's hope in an organization that's been hopeless for a very long time.
Well, look, man, when we got in on the football thing back in 96 and 97, we stunk. We picked 4th, right? You know, we go 4-12. The draft was the story beginning October 15th most years as to whether it was going to be Boulware or McAllister or what direction we're going to go in to add to Ray Lewis. It kind of came off the boat with football. And then there's that weekend in April where we would drink beer and throw darts and shoot pool between picks and have parties, and thousands of people would show up. There was all of that. And it's still amazing to me that when they drafted Matt Wieters, the last time they really sucked and they were doing 1-1s, right? When they drafted Matt Wieters, like, I think it came on like a pigeon on Morse code or something, or on a fax machine. And, you know, now we've at least moved into this point where when you stink as much as they stunk, that even you know who Drew Jones is. And you can be disappointed or look at it and say, is this a Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf thing? Where is this going to be? And we all know baseball's different from the life cycle of a kid who was at a prom 4 weeks ago, literally, right, who needs to hit off of Scherzer and Verlander. Like, I don't know that we're there, but with baseball, at least, they've hooked you in, me in, that we're going to follow this kid in the way I guess we followed Matt Wieters, in the way that we waited on Adley Rutschman, and now he's here and he's hitting baseballs.
No, I agree with you. It's interesting, all the analysis that I saw from all the experts, all the pundits, but it seems like Jackson is Hamilton. What's his name again? Hamilton Jackson.
No, Jackson Holliday.
Jackson
Kyle
Holliday.
Hamilton.
There you go.
Kyle Hamilton. What you're doing
Lamar,
is you're confusing your Hamiltons and your Jacksons.
Lamar Jackson, right?
Thing.
And Lamar Jackson.
Mr. Like Jackson and nasty, you know, absolutely. So
no,
all these
right
names that are on money and all these names that are on the constant, you know, back in the Declaration of Independence, right?
You're right about that. So here I'm trying to be a baseball draft expert. It's not working out too well. But this kid seems to be the safest pick, I guess. He's going to make it into the major leagues at some point. And the only question is, how good is he going to be? But you have to love all the young talent that the Orioles have accumulated. And also the farm system seems to be the best, or if not one of the best in major leagues. So if they have a strong farm system, Nestor, I think that does give them a chance to compete in the future against the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Rays and the Blue Jays. And I guess the last piece, and you can speak to this, would be pitching, right? You got to have some pitchers to put out there.
I haven't talked to anybody about this, but this week, seeing this kid get drafted, right? He had long hair like me, so I liked him
Mhm.
right away. He's out in Oklahoma and Stillwater. And, his dad, I came in contact with his dad at some All Star games and different things like that. All cool, 7-time All Star, great player.
Mhm. Mhm.
But the stories that were written in '06 and '07, back when the Rockies were in the World Series and played well against the Red Sox, that there were stories about this little 3-year-old kid playing wiffle ball and
Yep.
terrorizing the clubhouse, and he's that kid. And Dennis, I'll tell you this: I'm 53, right? So I have some memories. I remember Prince Fielder being in the locker room with Cecil Fielder as
Mhm.
a Tiger back when Sparky Anderson, Mickey Tettleton, Dave Johnson was on that Detroit Tigers team, Middle River Dave, right? I remember little Tim Raines Jr., little Rock Raines running around when Tim Raines was at the end of his career at Camden Yards, 92, 93. I remember Tony Gwynn Jr.
Mhm.
when Tony Gwynn and I were palling around and he was the kid. I remember David Segui's son, Corey, and I remember Rafael Palmeiro's son, who played minor league ball and was drafted as well, right? It was a very good player, still is a very good player, right? So Patrick, I think his name was he was a little boy.
Mhm.
I remember all these little boys running around in dad's jersey, too big, gloves, wiffle balls, wiffle bats, dad playing catch with him out there on the first base line at Camden Yards. I remember all of that. So I've got a real soft spot for that. You know what I mean? When I see that, and Brian Roberts was the son of a coach. I mean,
Mhm.
Billick would always say. Billick said this about Brandon Stokely 25 years ago. Son of a ball player, John Harbaugh, Jack Harbaugh, right? Jim
Right.
Harbaugh, right? These family connections to sports. I think that's a wonderful thing, and I think and both of these kids, Drew Jones as well, right? A pedigree legacy kid, but there's something about that me being around baseball, and Angelos took my press pass 16 years ago, so I didn't meet any, I didn't get to see Adam Jones's kids or, whatever when they're going to be major leaguers in 2038 or whatever. But I did see a bunch of these kids, and it's kind of a neat thing. And to for this kid to always want to do this and be a 1-1, I'm going to root for Jackson Holiday.
Yeah, very good. It's different, I guess, than the NFL. And it takes a long time. You're talking about high school kids. They have a longer road to the majors than an NFL kid. I mean, they've got minor leagues and the different levels that they have to play at, and some develop and some don't.
Well, we're certainly hopeful that the development is here. And look, we'll talk a little baseball if they're relevant, but it's football time, right? This is 6 months of waiting.
Oh, you're
They've
right.
had a death in the family. They have a quarterback who is, I don't know if he's disgruntled or whatever. I don't know what he is. I don't know whether he's playing this out, whether he wants to be here, whether he doesn't want to be here, whether they're short shrifting him on money. I thought Andrew Brandt's piece, and I shared that out on Twitter, was the best piece of all of it. Just talking about like the price is $231 million now. And if you don't want to pay it, then you're going to franchise tag him next. I mean, all of this tagging and stuff like that leads to disgruntled to me. And
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know
not
where
healthy.
this is going, but it's not healthy right now. The only healthy thing would be if they come in and say he signed. And then if somebody came on my timeline when I shared that story and they said this, and I actually wrote it down. And this was not my quote. This is somebody else's quote. I want to get it right. I like Lamar, but they'd be crazy to do that kind of deal. Hmm.
I think a lot of people feel that way, Ness. Yeah, right player, right price has been their mantra for a very long time. I can't see them changing that direction right now in regards to Lamar. It's going to play out the way it's supposed to. We see that Orlando Brown Jr. Now he didn't come to terms with the Chiefs. It wouldn't surprise anyone by what I'm reading if he holds out that he's not going to play on the tag. He may show up for the first game of the year.
Now the
He
tag for him is 20 million, 22 million.
something like that, but and
It's
evidently
a
they came
tag on
very.
a left tackle. That's a big number.
It's a big number, but and they also came. They said they came very close to signing him long term, and they didn't. They couldn't stick the landing. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Does he come into camp? Not to camp. I don't think he's going to go to camp. Will he be in shape for the first game of the year when he shows up? If he shows up, so a lot of drama there. Looks like perhaps time will tell that Eric DaCosta played that one correctly by trading him to the Chiefs and being able to get Odafe Owe as a replacement with that first round draft pick he procured. But it's never a good, I guess what I'm getting at, it's never a good idea to tag a player. There's hard feelings, there's calluses that build up in that relationship, calcium deposits, and it's not the same. So it would behoove the Ravens to put a deal together with him. And who knows what he's thinking? That's the, he's passive aggressive on the social media. He's signaling he's ready to sign, but I feel that the Ravens are probably in the 150, 165 million guarantee, and he's at 231 and or more. That's my gut feeling.
Well, the guarantee doubled because the guarantee this time last year was 80 or 90, right? Orlando Brown is 16.6 million, and they apparently offered a 6-year, $139 million contract that's been turned down. I don't know how much of that's guaranteed money, right?
Should have taken it. Should have taken it.
I remember running him into him in the airport in Indianapolis after he ran like a 6.2 40 or whatever the hell it was, right? 5.7 40. That was my number.
You ran the fastest 48. I
ran a 5.7 on the clock. It's true.
You did.
Saragusa documented it. So I have that on tape.
I remember that.
But to say, well, Lamar's going to make 23 million this year, and that's a good number. Not for him, it's not.
It's a terrible number.
And I talked to Luke about this. Like, if I'm him, I wouldn't play. I guess I don't know.
And if you and I were his agents or his inner circle, we would advise him not to play at 23 million. Grossly undervalued, right? For him to play this year would take 40, 45, 50 million dollars if he was my player, guaranteed, plus a Lloyd's of London contract for 300 million against catastrophic injury. I mean, that's or 500 million, whatever the number is. But my player wouldn't show up. My friend wouldn't show up if my friend was Lamar Jackson for $23 million a year. That's a ridiculously low number. Not for a 2019 MVP with his best football ahead of him.
Well, you don't know that his best football's ahead of him. That's where I'll push back on that, because I don't know that he's going to get better. I don't know that he's going to get faster. I don't know that the league hasn't gotten somewhat wise to him. And I certainly know this, and I know this from witnessing it with Joe Flacco. Wherever Joe Flacco was, perfect in January, winning the Super Bowl, he was pretty damn good for 5 or 6 years. We won a lot of games around here, right? Won more games than we won with Lamar so far, just as it is. And he didn't run into linebackers, right? So the notion that we're going to win a Super Bowl by signing him, I don't know. I that's the billion-dollar question for DaCosta and Bisciotti to say, well, if he's pissed off and goes and plays for us this year and runs around and he wins, we're going to have to give him $300 million, or somebody's going to have to give him $300 million, and we probably feel better about it than we would coming off of holding out from OTAs, didn't play the last 6-7 weeks of last year, getting a little itchy on social media when we're dealing his buddy who begged off the team. His buddy asked off the boat. We let him off the boat, and he's hammering the front office in the middle of the draft. You know what I mean? So there's a little bit of that.
And
right?
He knew about it. The sad thing is he knew about it. This was no secret.
Knew about it.
They knew. He knew. For him to react with a WTF in social media, that was really uncalled for a leader of the team, the face of the franchise, of the organization. But nevertheless, I do think his best football was ahead of him. He was ascending. He was an ascending player prior to his injury. Before the bye, Nestor, he was having a historic season. He was unbelievable. And then something happened. They just went off the rails, starting with that Miami game. That was really, really bad. I mean, that was just a terrible showing by the entire team, particularly Lamar. They just couldn't move the ball. But that was a one-game sample. He's still 37-12. I feel his best football is still ahead of him. I like to see him pass more and run less, but that's up to the team to figure that part of it out.
Well, and that's where I'm saying where the Flacco thing. When you give him $50 million a year, and his cap figure goes from 6% to 12% to 20% of your cap number, and then you have to fill in Mark Andrews and tight ends and weapons and who's going to play left tackle and who's going to play right tackle and who's going to protect him and how's this center going to work out, and like all that they've done from the minute they brought him in, including jettisoning their $20 million quarterback who won him a Super Bowl. From the minute he came in, they've built the entire program around him, right?
Because Flacco, in my opinion, when the pen came off the contract right after the Super Bowl, his motivation went along with it. Now, the front office also shortchanged him with not having enough great skilled players around him. I know his salary was a big part of that too. But Joe, it seemed like Joe took his foot off the gas right after that contract. Whereas with Lamar, I don't believe that happens with him. I think he's got a big chip on his shoulder. I think that chip will always be there. He's made comments he wants to be a billionaire. He's made comments he wants to win Super Bowls. I think this is a special player who wants to go to Canton. He wants to win Super Bowls. He'll pay the price. And if I'm the Ravens, I do all I can to sign him, because I don't want years here with Kyle Bowlers and Stony Cases and, you know, water buffaloes, because you can't win. This team will not be any good without him. They won't. They'll be lucky to finish 500 if Lamar Jackson doesn't play.
Well, you're making a great point. I mean, if he doesn't show up and play, they're in a world of hurt because they don't have another one of him. You know, he's one of one, as they like to say, and all of that. But the question as to whether he's going to win a Super Bowl here in the next 5 years, that's very complex. And certainly given his skill set and what needs to happen around him and what you don't want him doing, which is running 23 times in a game, which was sort of the end of him last year, right?
Well, let me ask you a question. They catch lightning in the bottle, which you have to, in most cases, to win a Super Bowl. They win a Super Bowl this year. Lamar balls out. What's his market value next year?
Yeah, a blank check, right?
Right. What's the guarantee next year? Not just by the Ravens, but anybody. What are you going to give him then? If he does rise up, if he does,
well, you can't pay him any more than being the highest paid player, whatever that is, right?
Okay,
so whatever Deshaun Watson's at $46 million, so he's at 47. If he wins the Super Bowl, he doesn't get 60 a year. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to go up like that. So if you're going to pay him like he's won the Super Bowl anyway, at least with Flacco, he really did win the Super Bowl when they paid him like he won the Super Bowl. In this case, if you're going to pay him at top of class and he's the best quarterback in the sport, he's not the best quarterback in the sport. He's not. He really isn't.
But
he's exciting. He's fascinating. He's good. He's very good. He's not. If you could pick a quarterback in the league, you wouldn't pick Lamar Jackson. You wouldn't. If you could pick them all, you wouldn't pick him unless you really were committed to all these other elements that have to happen around him. And all these other elements that have to happen around him, they've tried that. And they have a left tackle with a lot of money who we're not sure is going to get on the field, right? And they still have questions at wide receiver. They have questions.
Do. Now, look, he wouldn't be the first quarterback, but there wouldn't be many that I would take ahead of him. It'd be a handful. He's still one of one. And that's the thing is, if they said he's one of one, his attitude should be, then I should have a one of one contract to reflect that. And the other point is, when you pay a player in any sport, you're paying them for not what they've done. Even Flacco, you're paying them for what they're going to do, potentially. They didn't expect Flacco to win one Super Bowl. They expected more Super Bowls under Flacco. Same thing with Lamar. Lamar, they expect him as an ascending player. And what is he, just 25 years old? I don't think he's 26 yet. He's still a very young man.
Well, you say a young man, but when you're a running back at 29, you're not young anymore, right? And I don't want to call him a running back because Lord knows don't have that on the internet.
Well,
right?
he's not a running. He's not a
running back, but he runs into linebackers 15 times a game when they're good.
He's a quarterback that can run, and I would like to see them again with a stout running game. Go back to play action, right? Have him run less. Have him rely on his arm more than his legs.
Okay, so if he has to rely on his arm more than his legs, there's a lot of people that wouldn't give him $50 million a year to do that. That's seriously. That's around the league. Like the notion that he would just come out and everybody would want him, I don't think he's for everybody. I really don't. I think there's a lot you'd have to do to your team to change your team. Keeping in mind, we're always going to be bitching about the wide receivers, Dennis. He's never going to throw the ball more than 32 times a game. They don't want him to throw the ball this is the conundrum with him as to what you're going to pay him to do, what you want him to do, because you're going to pay him all this money to run. You want him to run, but you don't want him to run too much.
The thing that bothers me with this team, and every team has flaws, right? The flaw with this team is if they get behind, do they have the weapons to catch up? Well, Mark Andrews and Rashard Bateman, are they enough for the team to overcome a 3-touchdown, a 2-touchdown deficit with 10 minutes left to go in the game? Since they are a run-first team, that's my only concern. I think if this team is healthy, they'll get on top of somebody and just pound them to death with hopefully a good defensive performance. But when they get to the playoffs, if they happen to get into a shootout, if they fall behind, do they have enough weapons that they can keep up with the Chiefs and the Bills and those type of teams in the AFC?
We keep talking about 2019, and look, I was there for all those games, and it was insane. It was like magnet football, right? And
crazy.
To your point, running, once you run, you say they're run first. They're sort of run only, because if they run first and it fails, they're not going to pass. I mean, they're not going to pass that way. They're not going to have an 8 and 10 pass drive. It's not the way they're wired. So when they don't run well, it doesn't work well. And once they run well and they run really well, they don't need to do anything else. In
No,
19,
I
all they
agree
needed
with
to
you.
do was run.
No, but the thing is, and this is
And
where,
that's when you get pissed off wide receivers. That's when you get Willie Snead saying, I like cracking down, but give me the ball 6-8 times a game.
this is where I in 2019, this is when I criticized them, and I think rightfully so. When you're up by 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns with 15 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, I mean, have your quarterback work on some passing. Stop trying to be the Oklahoma Sooners or the Ohio State Buckeyes, right? Pass the ball, work on your weaknesses. You don't have to sit there and try to set records. And that's where I fault John Harbaugh a little bit, is that get away from the records when you have an opportunity and work on the stuff that's going to make you better come playoff time. Work on your passing. But the thing is, also in 2019, how many times did they pull Lamar Jackson in the fourth quarter? Many times. But and then you got Huntley coming in, just handing the ball off. That's all they did. It was ground and pound for 4 quarters. You're right about that.
Well, all they want to do is get out of the game at that point. You're out in Cincinnati, you're winning, or wherever you are. You just want to, 11 minutes left on the clock. You want to get on the plane, get everybody healthy, and get back and play the Rams next week or whatever. And it's football season. Dennis Koulatsos is here. He is over Coons Baltimore Ford over Security Boulevard. Make sure you stop by, say hello. His phone's always on his hip. You hear the ads here, and you can certainly find him on Thursday between 3 and 5, and then again on Sunday morning. And also out on social media at D Koulatsos Show. Give me a little primer on the automotive industry here and anything else we got going on, because people are still buying cars and the summer's going to get away. I started talking about pumpkin ice cream last week with my wise friends, and I'm like, oh my God, it's like summer's getting away, but we're getting to be about that time of the year.
You also talked about peach cake a couple of weeks ago. So we have peach cake. We have Ravens rookies reporting to camp. It's on. It's happening, Nestor, right here, right now.
Well, the minute I get off with you, I'm going to get peach cakes.
There you go.
My wife has already dispatched me out for all of that. Find him. He'll be here on Thursday, and again on Sunday. You can find him at D Koulatsos Show, and of course I will be a part of his show, as will Luke, on Thursday and on Sunday morning. Have a beautiful post All-Star game. Then I'm waiting for the Yankees starting pitching to see if Nasty Nestor is going to pitch at Camden Yards. I think they're going to pitch him in Houston, but if Nasty Nestor pitches at Camden Yards, you're going to get a text from me and say, look,
you got to show up. You got to show up. You got to be there for that one. The original Nasty Nestor.
I got to have a talk with him at some point before this is all over with. And I want to get a Nasty Nestor shirt, but I'm figuring this is like Fernando. I mean, this guy's not going to the Hall of Fame. I mean, if he does, great. I need a Nestor in the Hall of Fame. But if he's not, these shirts are going to be $5 in New York next summer. Wow. So I'm kind of waiting on it a little bit.
Well, you're certainly a Hall of Famer journalist, so there you go.
I'll give him one of my Get Nasty shirts. How about
that?
That's right. From the old
days. Give him your yellow jacket.
Hey, they're the Yankees. We can't like them. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Major League Baseball, the Orioles, and Ravens training camp here at Baltimore Positive. Stay with us.